In 8 decades, man went from the first powered flight to the awesome B-2 stealth bomber. From wood and wire airframes to the most deadly weapon on the modern battlefield, all in a single lifetime.
Almost from the minute that the airplane was built, people conceptualized dropping bombs from it.
It was World War I that gave the bomber clearance for takeoff. Military strategists were desperate to break the bloody stalemate of trench warfare. So they took to the air.
There was a desperate desire to find a way around the dominance of the defensive. In order to get past the deadlock in the First World War, especially in the Western Front, you had to leap off the ground and up into the air.
These specialized bombing aircraft capable of carrying a reasonable payload, say several hundred pounds of bombs, that really only emerges in the First World War. And it emerges largely because of the work of an individual whose name we associate primarily with helicopters, Igor Sikorsky. And he developed a whole family of bombers called the Ilya Muromets, which flew during the First World War.
The work of Sikorsky and the Russians was picked up by the British. The Handley Page Company fathered the highly successful Model O family in 1915. The First World War bomber was not exactly devastating. Later models could carry barely 15 lightweight 100-pound bombs. And top speed was a wheezing, panting 90 miles an hour.
The bombs were small because the performance of the aircraft was limited, and bombs added to the weight of the aircraft. In reality, the strategic bombing was more of a nuisance and an aggravation than had any real impact on the military outcome of the war.
But it was the beginning of the notion that you could carry the war to the enemy.
The Germans had a different idea: Zeppelins.
Now, Germany had placed a great deal of effort in using the airship as a long-range bombing system and had undertaken bombing raids over England, for example, and other target areas as well, even Russia. But the airship was a highly vulnerable weapon.
Zeppelins were full of tens of thousands of cubic meters of hydrogen. This could be a problem.
And a Zeppelin is a really efficient way to move a heavy load in the air, unless somebody's shooting at you.
Or you catch fire. The extreme vulnerability of airships meant that the airplane was the future. Airframes were still being built of wood and canvas. Wood was light and really did grow on trees. But despite resistance, some visionaries made planes out of metal.
People have said it's counterintuitive, that if you take a look at kites and you take a look at light flying materials, balsa wood, things like that, wood is so much lighter, metal is so much heavier. But if we think of the skills that you have to work in wood very effectively, it requires a great deal of skill and a great deal of training, something that is not necessarily a requirement if you're trying to mass produce things very rapidly using a mechanized industrial process.
By the outbreak of World War II, bombers were multi-engined metal beasts. They had banks of powerful engines to generate enough power to lift 50 tons of steel into the air.
Our main doors open, 6 degrees right on.
The future of bomber design was set. From World War II heavies to the B-2 stealth bomber, metal was the way forward.